intelligent black people. And today we're here to talk about LeBron James, King James. LeBron has just passed yet another amazing milestone. Tom Brady is the GOAT to some people. Michael Jordan's the GOAT to other people. Maybe some people it's Wilt Chamberlain. Some people it's Byron, Russell, Bill Russell. Right, Bill Russell. Thank you. But LeBron is it seems he's the GOAT when it comes to mixing business with sports. Right up there with Jordan anyway, and a few others. And so LeBron just passed $1 billion in career earnings, according to a lot of national publications. And to break this down, I got a chance to talk to my good friend, Jeff Lightsy Jr. from Ball Sports. What's going on, Jeff? How you doing today, man?
Pretty good. How about yourself, Dr. Boyce?
Doing very well, man. Doing very well. So tell me what's going on with LeBron James.
So with LeBron, like you said, he's passed the $1 billion mark for career earnings, and he's in a rare air, right? Like he's done something that really hasn't been done in team sports history. What I mean by that is that, yes, there are guys like you mentioned, Michael Jordan, and even the Junior Bridgemans and the Magic Johnsons of the world who have passed, like who've made a bunch of money, right? Like a whole bunch of money, but most of their money came after they were done playing basketball. Like I said, Junior Bridgman might be the second most wealthiest former NBA player a lot of people don't even know about, but he made all of his money, investing in Wendy's as a startup company, and now obviously we know Wendy's is a national brand. Michael Jordan made all of his money from his shoe deal. That most of that was accumulated after he was done playing basketball. Magic Johnson had all the different businesses and the Magic Johnson theaters and all of that stuff, so he made hundreds of millions of dollars after, once again, he was done playing basketball. But there's only a rare few amount of people in sports history who made over $1 billion in earnings while currently being active. You got Tiger Woods, Floyd Mayweather, and now you got LeBron James. But the biggest difference between the Tiger Woods and the Floyd Mayweathers is the fact that they played individual sports, right? Like it was them versus everybody else. It was Floyd against his opponent. It was Tiger Woods against the guys on the PGA Tour. And so there was no shared spotlight. But when you're LeBron James, you play a game of basketball that ultimately depends on your teammates. Right? Like you can't, as we've known, LeBron James can't win every game because it's dependent on other guys. And so to be able to elevate yourself to the point to where you can make that much money in a team sport is just unfathomable, right? Like it's almost, it had never been done. I mean, think about it. Michael Jordan's the biggest star of stars and he didn't do it, right? Now, granted, it was a different era and it was a different thing in different times, but at the same time, LeBron's the only team sport player in American team sports. The international soccer stars are different. The Ronaldos and the Messis, they're in a different playing field. They're a global game. But basketball's kind of global, but it's mainly here in North America. So that's why what he's done is so rare. And what's made it even more special is that less than half of the earnings come from the NBA. About 30% of the earnings of his $1 billion empire actually comes from the NBA. So about 300 million, which is a large number, right? Like it's a huge number, comes from the NBA. But 700 million of this, if we just use 1 billion as a round number, 700 million of the $1 billion actually comes from his investments outside of basketball. That's what makes it so so remarkable, so relevant. I think when I did the story, I said LeBron James makes $1 billion from investing, not basketball. So think about it, his investments, his endorsements, and what he's been able to do with his basketball salary and essentially flip it, a couple times is what's so amazing about this. And it's just, like I said, he's the first to ever do it in team sports history. And now, and obviously most of that money came from outside of the actual basketball court. It's crazy.
Wow. So let's do a slow clap for LeBron James. Let's do a digital round of applause. Very good, King James. Very good. LeBron is such an awesome athlete in my mind, because when you see guys like LeBron James, maybe Michael Jordan, the old Tiger Woods, the pre-2009 Tiger Woods, before that white lady drove him crazy, and even a Tom Brady, if you want to throw a white guy in there. You all almost so impressed and just amazed by not just their athletic ability, but what's going on up here, the focus. I mean, a lot of people don't understand just how much pressure is on these guys. Just getting to the NBA is really, really hard. I mean, we've seen people dedicate their whole life to try to make it to the NBA and can't even get on the bench.
Absolutely.
Right? Can't barely make it in the G League. Right? You get to the G League. Is it the G League? Is that what it is?
Yes, the G League. Yeah.
Yeah, you get to the G League, and there are guys there who can do amazing things in the G League. They're not even good enough to get on the bench in the main league. I mean, it's crazy. And then for him to rise, and again, this happened at an early age. Yeah. LeBron had composure at an early age. He was 16. And I was like, this kid's mind is so centered. You know, Tiger had that too, actually, with his father. I don't know what he just, I guess, had some little issues on the side, but there's something there, right? There's something to be said about that mental toughness. Or again, you flip over to football. You look at what Brady just did at 43 years old. You can't really do those things if you're a regular person who gets rattled easily, right? Yeah. You have to have a type of focus that you know, and a type of focus and intensity that allows you to be successful at everything. That's the point. And so the story I'll share with you is I remember one time when I was teaching at Syracuse, there was this guy who was in my class, and it was an all-white class, and I had one black student, and the black student was on the football team. He was an all-conference, all-Big East wide receiver, and he literally on every test would get like the worst grade in the class. And I would see him on TV on Saturdays catching touchdown passes and getting all these accolades. But yet he, you know, on my every test, I'd be like, man, this sucks. The black man has the lowest grade in the entire class, not the second lowest, the lowest. So he came to my office one time, and I said, he said, yeah, man, you know, your class is kind of hard. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I said, what you do is hard. I said, you go out every weekend and you play in front of millions of people on TV, 80,000 people in the stands, a million watching on TV, and you're playing against some of the best athletes in the country, and you dominate the best athletes in the country every single week on national TV, and you play football and you memorize playbooks that are this thick, right? I said, do you know why I couldn't play middle school football? The reason I almost got kicked off my sixth grade team. He said, why? I said, because I couldn't pay attention long enough to learn the plays. So, because my coach put me in the game, and he said, and I was a running back. I was the backup running back because I was pretty fast. And he said, all right, everybody run a 44 blast. And so the quarterback said, I was like, shit, what's a 44 blast? The quarterback said, everybody went right. I ran to the left. like I literally could not learn the plays. Maybe I could have learned it if I concentrated. But my point is to say, and I said to him, I said, I don't understand how you could be a genius on the field and become an idiot in my class. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how you could be great at one thing and terrible at another. I believe that if you put 1/10 of the effort into this that you put into football, you could actually get the highest grade in the class. And whatever I said must have made a difference, because literally on the next test, he made an 89. I was very proud of him. And the point of that whole conversation was, you know, that what I admire about a Michael Jordan or LeBron James and some of the other guys that are doing it too, Shaquille O'Neal, a lot of them are doing this now, is that they understand that the greatness of the black male is not just something that should be confined to a basketball court or a football field. You know, the same competitive drive that led Michael Jordan to dominate the greatest athletes on the planet. I mean, he was the alpha among alphas. Like he would play in, you know, there were stories about how he would train for the Olympics with the other Olympians, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, and dominate the other Olympians, right? That same drive and determination it takes to do things like that is exactly what you need to be successful in everything that you do. And I know this well because I was an athlete. I did a little bit better at things like track and stuff like that. And I was captain of my track team. And it was through sports I learned hard work and dedication and focus and intensity and bouncing back from your setbacks, you know, learn how to turn a loss into a lesson. All these things you learn in sports, that's exactly what you need to compete in the game of life. So what these guys, what LeBron is doing in his life is really impressive to me, because this is the beginning for him. This is not, you know, he's gonna do so many great things in his life. I predict that him playing basketball will be like an afterthought. It'll be like how people kind of remember that Ronald Reagan was an actor before he became president of the United States. I think he's going to be that great. What are your thoughts on LeBron and just any of that, Jeff?
No, that's absolutely right, because you got to think. I mentioned Jordan and Magic and Junior, and you even talked about Shaq and all this stuff. Like I said, they made a bunch of money once they were done playing basketball, because at the end of the day, yeah, we'll remember LeBron James as a basketball player because he's that great. Like he did that many things. But when it comes to when we look up in 10 or 20 years and he's worth 2 or 3 billion or 4 or 5 billion dollars, that's not going to be from playing basketball. It's going to be from everything he's done after playing basketball, right? Like the fact that Michael Jordan's worth over $1 billion, he didn't make a quarter of that, a penny of that playing basketball, right? Like Michael Jordan might have earned $100 million playing basketball, maybe. And he got most of that in his last 2 years with the Bulls, right? He got about 60 million, 70 million his last couple of years with the Bulls, but the man's worth like probably closer to $2 billion now. So think about it, 60 million to 2 billion. That's because your energy and the way, like you said, the way that you're able to dominate the basketball court, now you're just dominating the boardroom. Now you're just dominating the stock market. Now you're just dominating like your business ventures, right? Like that, like basketball, honestly, for those men, Magic and Jordan in particular, honestly took them away from money, right? Like when it comes to just accumulating wealth, because when you think about it, they made all of their money once they were done playing basketball. Magic Johnson is probably worth like $600, $700 million right now. And his best contract, like the big contract he signed, was for 25 years, $25 million with the Lakers. The Lakers wanted to make him a Laker for life. So they signed him to a 25-year contract, but it was only worth $25 million. So how the hell do you flip 25? And he didn't play the full 25 years, obviously. So how do you flip $25 million, let's say, to $700 million? You don't do that from dribbling a ball. You do that from everything else. And so that's why when LeBron James ultimately will be worth so much money, it's because he will not be distracted with basketball. So he's like, man, you make $300 million, you call that a distraction? Well, yeah, it is when you're at the same time, you accumulate $700 million doing everything else. And that's exactly what the greats did. And I think that's why LeBron James' legacy will be worth so much more than just basketball. And that's why us, just as individuals, someone who may not ever sniff $300 million can use that same strategy to apply to your life. Right? Like you might not make $300 million, but say if you make 30,000, 40,000, there's no reason why you can't flip your money, right? Like you can't make double that outside of your job or outside of your small business or outside of, you know what I mean? Like it's the same rules apply, right? You might not be getting a sponsorship from Pepsi or Coca-Cola, but the Pepsi and Coca-Cola stocks pay dividends, right? Like, or you know what I mean? The Nike or Under Armour might not be paying you to wear their brands, but you can get paid by buying their brands or buying their company. It's the same, all the same rules apply, right? Like you might not be playing with the same amount of money that LeBron James is playing with, but whatever money that you're making, you can do the exact same thing. And I think that's the ultimate lesson to learn from LeBron James, to see that the NBA don't pay his bills. He pays his bills by being smart with his investments.
All right, everybody. If you just came in, I'm talking with Jeff Lightsy Jr. from the Black Boss Channel. And you can follow Jeff at JLightsy7. He's really smart. He knows a lot about sports. And also follow the blackbosschannel.com if you're into what black men have to say. They talk about sports, politics, stocks, everything else. And also on my Twitch channel. My Twitch handle is Bo Watkin, BOWATKIN. I actually do some stuff on Twitch as well. We're on pretty much all the platforms. But if you can't find it that way, you can also go to drboycetwitch.com. You can find it there. That's where, I don't know if you know, Jeff. I don't know if you've seen where I play Call of Duty, and I like to, like, you
I
know.
was watching the other day. You was getting killed, man.
I was like getting blown away every other play. But I'm going to keep practicing. I'm going to get better. Eventually, I'm going to nail it. But anyway, yeah, so I play video games with my kids, and also we talk shit, talk stocks, just have fun, stuff like that. And so if you want to follow me on Twitch, feel free to do that. All right, so and hit the thumbs up button. If you haven't hit the thumbs up button, please do that. So, you know, what I really think that what's really going on here is athletes are, you know, they've evolved through time where they understand that, you know, that the paycheck that you're receiving is not your greatest, the greatest representation of your value. And that's true for really anybody. That's why, you know, for example, a lot of the people I talk to in the Black Wealth Bootcamp, stuff like that, what we're really talking about is saying, look, the reason that they're paying you to do that job is because they're basically drilling for oil in your backyard. You know, it's like if you own property and you've got oil in the backyard of your property. Imagine that. Imagine so an oil refinery or an oil company will come to your house and say, hey, we'll pay you, you know, $500,000 a year if you let us drill in your backyard. Well, if they're giving you $500,000 a year, unfortunately, in many cases, that means that they might be extracting $5 or $10 million a year out of and giving you $500,000. Now, that doesn't mean it's a bad deal necessarily. I mean, I don't think athletes at all are getting a bad deal. I think especially NBA players, they do okay. I don't think it's such a terrible. It's not a terrible life, right? But really, where you get that real value is when you learn how to drill for that oil yourself, right?
Yeah.
Or also the other thing too is that a lot of the way that we're duped in terms of how to make money in America is that from an early age we're taught that the way to make money is through labor and to trade your time for money. And so basically you're trained to sort of work hard and do your best and go to school, and then you can make more money and make a higher income.
Yeah,
and so your dream is like, okay, I want to be a lawyer making $400 an hour, etc. And that's all good. But what happens is I know a lot of those $400, $500 an hour lawyers. And what happens is they get drained. They get to the point where in economics, we call this the point of diminishing returns, where you're no longer excited because you got a big paycheck. You're exhausted because you're working 80 hours a week. Your quality of life sucks because you can't spend time with your wife, can't spend time with your kids. Your kids hate your guts because you're working all the time. And you're like, but I went out and I got all this for you. And they're like, F you. Like, we didn't want money. We wanted your time, right? But you're like, but I ain't got no time. Exactly, right? So then you realize, wait a minute, you peek behind curtain number 3, right? Because curtain number 1 is the good job, right? Curtain number 2 is where you actually learn how to do things like run a business, where you're actually telling people what to do and delegating and running the company. And then that's really great because then you're making really big money. You work less, but you're still working a lot, and your wealth just kind of goes insane. But then the door number 3 is when you get to where LeBron has gotten to, where LeBron is going to get to the point where, just like an Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, people like that can make millions of dollars a week without even getting out of bed. Like they just literally, they own assets. They own, he'll have so much stock that he'll just have, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in stock that he can go and just take a little piece of that and do whatever he wants, right? He'll have his yacht and his, all his yacht, his mansion, all these other things, and they'll all be business expenses, and it'll just be a bunch of assets that he's managing where literally going to work is optional. He'll go to work if he wants to, but he'll never, ever have to do that again. So I encourage people to look behind door number 3 because you don't have to be rich to get to that point. I know people that have an income of, say, less than $100,000 a year who don't work for that money, right? And that's the funny thing about America is that the people that make the most money are the ones who work the least. The ones who work the most pay all the taxes and they do all the work. And they're doing work on behalf of the people who are at the top of the food chain. And what the distinguishing factor is, did you take the time to understand how the game works? And so that's where and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, Jeff, or you can share a perspective on what I just said, but that's where training comes into play. LeBron is a great basketball player, one of the best in the world, because he practices, right? LeBron would not be an NBA player if he did not practice basketball on a regular basis. Well, the same thing is true when you talk about playing the game of global economics. If you want to be good at that game, you got to practice. And the average millionaire spends 20 to 30 hours a month studying wealth, studying money, studying investing, studying real estate, studying business, just studying how to make money, right? And the average person only spends about 2 hours a month. So if somebody else, if you're sitting down and you're trying to do a deal with someone who's much more trained than you, who's practiced much more than you, then you're probably going to get the short end of that deal. It's like trying to play basketball against a guy who's in the gym 8 hours a day and you ain't been to the gym in 6 months. Well, how the hell you think you're going to win that game? You're not going to win. So what are your thoughts, Jeff? Give me some thoughts on that.
No, it's absolutely right. And there's so many different avenues that you can get to that point, right? Like, so LeBron, coming to the NBA straight out of high school may not have thought about that, but he had a guy on his team that was willing to do that. And his name was Maverick Carter. I don't know if you guys know the story of Maverick Carter, but Maverick Carter is LeBron James' #1 go-to guy, business partner, right? Like Maverick Carter is probably worth between $50 and $60 million and has never dribbled a basketball in the NBA a day in his life, right? Like Maverick Carter is probably around 6 foot or 6 foot something, right? Like not an NBA height, right? But Maverick Carter is like a genius, right? Like he is a deal maker is what they call him. And so he is the one that puts in those hours and hours with LeBron and right by his side, and is the one who helps him facilitate and orchestrate those deals. And that's why Maverick Carter is worth probably about $60 million and never touched a basketball a day in his life as far as on the NBA level. And so that's what, like I said, and there's ways to get to that point. You don't have to know everything, but the information is out there. There's things like the Black business schools and Dr. Boyce and different avenues that you can take to get you to that point. And that's what it took for LeBron. It took for him to get a guy like Maverick Carter on his team, teach him about the business of different venues, whether it's Nike, Blaze Pizza, investing in startup companies, investing in the stock market, doing these different type of investments. And that way it pays him. Right. That's why you're able to double your NBA salary in the market during the same time span. That's why you're able to make, 30% of your income of your net or your earnings is only from your job, right? Only 30%. The other 70% is made from your assets, endorsements, or investments, right? So that's why you're able to do that when you have a good business strategy, you have good business people around you, and you're able to take that mindset. The way that you dominate the court, you're able to dominate the boardroom. And it's the exact same strategy. And that's why it's beautiful to see, because it's so applicable to everyone. It's not, they don't have to just end with LeBron James. It's literally applicable to every single person that makes 20, 30, 40,000 a year, whatever. You can double that with investments. It's that simple.
Right on. Right on. Yeah. That's really the key, everybody. It's ownership. You got to own things, own stuff. Ownership needs to be part of our culture. Also, financial literacy needs to become part of our culture. Just knowing where the money's at, where the value is at, where the wealth is at. And so I congratulate LeBron James on surpassing $1 billion in earnings. I think that's really awesome. I'm not surprised in one bit. So I enjoy watching him play, and I enjoy watching him really play the real game, which is the game of economics. Now, the last piece I'm looking for is LeBron. If you're listening, I'm looking for y'all to get together and start a sports league. I'm sick and damn tired of y'all getting mad because the white man ain't treating y'all right. Well, it's not fair. Did you see Draymond Green? He was complaining about how we treated so bad. This ain't right. This ain't okay. I get that, but when you go into another man's house, then that man's gonna treat you the way he want to treat you. If you can't build a house, then you need to sit down and shut up. Seriously, or you could try to fight the master in his own house, but you ain't usually gonna win that fight. Remember, the Chicago Bears were purchased for $100, I think. It was either 100 or 500. I believe it was $100. The Bears are now worth over $3 billion. This is 2 generations later. Not that long. I think it was less than 100, about exactly 100 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. The Bears were purchased for $100. Now they're worth $3 billion. That's because the people that started the league had enough vision to say, we're going to create our own. Owning something of our own is important enough that we're going to go ahead and plant this seed. It was $100. It wasn't $1 trillion. It was $100. We're going to plant this seed, and we're going to build it to the best of our ability and see what happens. A lot of times doing big things ain't just about having the skill set to do it. It's about being a big enough thinker to do it. I'd rather be a big thinker with average intelligence and average resources than to be a small thinker with extraordinary intelligence and extraordinary resources. In our community, we have a lot of very intelligent small thinkers. We have a lot of PhDs that can change the world who are sitting in their offices quietly writing research papers that nobody's ever going to read. We have multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar athletes, eventually billion-dollar athletes, who still somehow think that even though you made $100 million last year, you still got to sit down and take orders from somebody. What is going through your mind that makes you think you got to listen to anybody? You making that kind of money, you ain't got to listen to nobody if you don't want to. You're just choosing to do that. So that same courage that we see from some of the white guys out here, the Elon Musk types, etc. Elon Musk is like, not only do I not give a fuck, but I'm going to build a ship and I'm going to go to Mars. It's not possible, but I'm going to figure out a way to do it, right? And I'm not saying we don't have people in our community that can do the same thing. I'm just saying that I believe we're even better than that. And I'm just saying that these guys are sitting on collectively billions and billions of dollars with millions and millions of fans and followers and supporters that will buy tickets to anything that they create. Why is it that the only person I can think of who started a sports league, the only celebrity with a sports league, is Ice Cube? And I don't think Ice Cube is 6 feet tall.
No,
he ain't never played. No. Right, Ice Cube is about my height. Right, and from what I remember, they used to call him Doughboy, right? Yeah. So I don't think he was a premier athlete, but you know what he is? He's a big thinker. He's a big thinker. He told that story on this platform. He's talking about when John Singleton, he did Boys in the Hood, and John Singleton said, "Look, there's not going to be any more roles like this in Hollywood.
Yeah,
that you're ever going to get." And so he said, well, you're going to have to write your own movie. So Ice Cube said, okay, I'm going to write a movie. The movie was called Friday. Friday is now $1 billion franchise. When he started NWA, there was no gangster rap being played on the radio. No. There was no radio. There's no record labels that were going to sign a group like that, right? But they signed themselves, right? So just at least give it up. I mean, you can critique it however we want to, right? But you got to at least give it up for the fact that these guys said, okay, we're going to create a pathway where there is none. These guys don't have it that hard. These guys are not, young dudes out in the street without a pot to piss in. These men are sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars a year in resources. So the only thing stopping you is a lack of imagination. That is the only thing stopping you. A lack of imagination, a lack of courage, a lack of desire to manifest. And here's the thing. This is the last point I'll make on this. Jeff, I'll let you get the last word. Is that one of the things I truly believe about manhood and masculinity is that a man is supposed to have the ability to not just lead, but to manifest. You're supposed to be an initiator. Women naturally, from what I've read, women are naturally very good nurturers and supporters. Not that they can't manifest too, but naturally they tend to nurture and they'll create or they'll support what's already there. But men are supposed to be the ones to be the initiators. That's why when you meet a girl, you're not supposed to wait for the girl to ask you out. I don't care what anybody says. You're supposed to go ask her out. You're supposed to initiate. If you don't initiate, tell me if y'all know what I'm talking about. If you don't initiate, she will just sit there a lot of times quietly waiting for you to just say the word. And some of y'all men are too scared to say the damn word because you don't have balls attached to your body. No, you're supposed to light the match, right? And she will follow your lead if you know where you're going. So I just want to see these guys, and I think that they're brilliant. I think that they're so extraordinary in what they do. I love the fact that they're growing and evolving and doing these great things. I want to see them manifest some shit that's going to elevate the whole community. I don't want to see them wearing Black Lives Matter apparel because George Soros created an organization that tells them what to wear. I want to see them say we created an organization that we manifested this, and we're wearing our shirts that represent our organization. No disrespect to y'all, but we got our own thing. That's what I think people have to do, because here's the other thing too. If LeBron's making billions and LeBron is taking care of his buddies, I think that's wonderful. But I would love to see LeBron create a company like a SpaceX or a Tesla type style company where you're employing hundreds of thousands of people. You know, Jeff Bezos employs 1.2 million people, if I'm not mistaken. I'd like to see something like that where you're doing something that's far bigger than just being like a guy that's doing well and hooking up your entourage. No disrespect to that. No disrespect to that at all. But I'm just telling you, there's another level to this shit. And I want those guys to really reach that level of true economic power, the ability to transform a community. There's no way you can be a rapper or an athlete who's rapping about and bragging about how you came from the hood and you're supposed to be a powerful man and your hood has not evolved in a significant way due to your existence. If your hood that you come from, if you Jay-Z, you came from the Marcy Projects, you've been rapping about Marcy Projects for 40 years, we all know that, and Marcy Projects is still a project and still has not elevated because of your success, that says that something is missing. That is my 2 cents. I'm done. Jeff, please give us the last word.
No, so absolutely. So like how you said that the creating the leagues, and if that's what you want to do, it is totally possible. You talked about Ice Cube and the Big Three, and there's also the XFL, which is now owned by The Rock, right? So the two biggest, I guess, independently owned sports leagues are owned by entertainers, right? Like they did guys that never, well, The Rock has a little history in sports, right? He played college football, but Ice Cube hasn't really known history in sports. So we're talking about guys who took their own money. Rock, I think, spent $15 million. I don't know how much it took. I'm sure it might have took that much or even more to start the Big Three for Ice Cube. But now they own something of their own, and now they employ former athletes, or in Ice Cube's instance, former NBA players, and The Rock's guys who either are on the cusp of making the NFL or who are used to playing the NFL, right? Like, so guys that are athletic enough to play at that level. And you don't have to go in direct competition with the NBA or the NFL if you don't want to. The Big Three is played during the spring or during the summer when the NBA is done. The XFL will be played during the spring when the NFL is done. So if you don't want to go head on with the giant, right? Like you don't want to be David versus Goliath, and I get it. But that option is still there. So it took two entertainers essentially to create their own sports league. So the fact to say that it's not possible, it is totally possible for those who want to do it. You can definitely come together. We've seen Ice Cube do it. Now we see The Rock doing it. And we've seen people do it throughout the history of time, whether it was Vince McMahon who started the XFL, or the guys who bought the Chicago Bears and all those other startup teams in the NFL that are now worth billions and billions of dollars. So yeah, it's definitely possible. You just have to want to be able to go do it. And if you do, if you come together collectively, guys definitely have enough capital to make it happen. And you just have to have the imagination, like you said, to want to do something and pull something like that off.
Well, the funny thing is, like, we know it's possible because the white man already did it like 1,000 times, right? So I mean, if you just really process that, right?
Yeah,
we have to be cautious about what could be defined as almost white supremacist thinking, where literally there'll be something that white people do every other Tuesday, but we'll be like, no, that's not possible. Like, well, wait, why is it possible for him, but it ain't possible for you? like
you have more capital, more resources, more money, and all that stuff. No,
right. yeah. I mean, if the way I see it is, if he can do it, I can do it 10 times better. And with 10 times less resources. I mean, I personally think that overall, like, I think this is the beginning of us really digging into our greatness, and I think also when you're measuring, what it really means to have an impact. I think the question becomes one of scale. If I am a black man who goes out and I make $1 billion or $100 million, I'm not talking about LeBron anymore. LeBron James is cool with me. I'm really good with LeBron James. No complaints at all. Just thoughts and suggestions on how to process this. But I go out here and I make a lot of money. And then what am I going to do? I'm naturally going to take care of my family. I'm going to take care of a lot of friends, right? But there's still another level to that. There's another level where you created a process and a system where you're taking care of thousands of people or better yet, engaging thousands of people with employment and opportunities who are not 6'8", 240 pounds, right? Who didn't grow up with you in the hood, who don't even know you. These are people that come and work for your company, work for your factories, work for your car dealerships, work for your organization. And so that to me is the big measuring stick. So, for example, I know a lot of people talk about LeBron in his school, and I think that's great. I love the fact that he built that school. I think that's wonderful. I don't know all the details of it, but it sounds like a great school. But one of the things you have to understand as black people, and this is very important, is that the white man in America didn't get his power by building one great school. He got his power by industrialization. He built thousands of schools. If you go across this campus, you won't find one big. If you go on college campuses, they're always, even schools you've never heard of, have these big, beautiful campuses with these big, beautiful buildings. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Tell me if you know what I'm talking about. These campuses are so gorgeous because I'm going to all these campuses with our 17-year-old. And here's what's fascinating. There are hundreds of these schools across the United States. The way they won World War II was they didn't build, the Germans could build one really good plane or maybe 20 really good planes. The Americans were building thousands of planes, right? They were building thousands of ships, thousands of tanks, millions of bullets, right? So they just outproduced, outmanufactured. So what I really think that we got to really process, and I think that I would love for, some of the NBA guys and whoever, if they really want to do something to transform the community, I encourage them to use a different measuring stick to say, okay, we know how to build one school, right? A lot of us could do that, but how do we build a school system? How do we build 200 schools that are just like the first one? You got the models out there, like Muhammad University of Islam, the Freedom Home Academy, LeBron School is pretty good. I don't know anything much about it, but I hear it's great. Take that blueprint and get $2 billion, $3 billion in funding from your corporate partners, and literally mass produce those schools all throughout the United States, so that you're educating thousands and thousands of kids. And that's where you go from the symbolic to the substantive. See, part of the reason that it's hard to win is because we don't have a systematic. It's like football, right? Or you think about football, you can't really win a football. You can't win a Super Bowl with one great player. Right? You need a system. You need a team. You need 22 guys that are going on and off, 11 offense, 11 defense, all your special teams, all your coaches, all your processes, your whole routine, your spring schedule. Like there's a whole corporation damn near that a football coach has to run to create a championship team. It has to be organized and structured, right? So our approach, our duel with white supremacy is one that is difficult, because what you're going up against is you're going against one of the greatest, most impactful, industrialized superpowers in the history of this earth. Like, really, the Industrial Revolution and what they were able to do. Like, Henry Ford was like, okay, let's just make millions of these little Model T cars, and then he makes billions of dollars from that, right? Like, they're just good at making lots of the same thing over and over and over again. That's what we need to do. We need an army. You can't win a war with a super soldier. You win a war with an army with thousands and thousands of soldiers. That's my last point on this. I hope everybody gets my point. And I want to reiterate that I think LeBron James is awesome, and I'm very, very happy that he's making all this money. And in fact, actually, I don't know what you think about this, Jeff, but I always felt like, look, I ain't gonna lie, I felt like Michael Jordan was kind of a prick. And I feel like Kobe Bryant, as great as he was, I feel like he copied a little bit of that Jordan model. He's deceased, so I'm not gonna say nothing negative about Kobe, because I like the guy, I really do. But I felt like LeBron kind of took it in a different direction. Like, even when you saw where he wanted to collaborate, and he was like, He's like, why should I try to win a championship by myself? I can just go to Miami and actually collaborate instead of competing. And the Jordans were like, and Jordans and Barkleys were like, oh, that's a bunch of BS. You don't want to work, you don't collaborate. I wouldn't get together with Barkley and Jordan. Well, maybe if you did, it would have been easier to win. Right? I like that collaborative energy that he has. I've always felt like LeBron was a great teammate, not just on the court, but off the court. That's why he's got all these homeboys around him that are doing extremely well, because he's doing well. Right. Yeah. That to me is personality. Like in sports, you can tell a guy's personality by how he plays. And LeBron, the first thing I noticed about him as a player was, besides his extreme intelligence and maturity for his age, was that he just seemed to have the ability to make everyone better. He could play a game, score 0 points, but he was there because he was controlling that whole game and getting all his teammates involved. So I like the guy. What do you think?
No, he's a very smart dude. He's two of his guys I talked about, Maverick Carter, and then his other guy, Rich Paul. Two of his top business partner, Rich Paul's his agent, Maverick Carter's his main #1 business guy. These guys didn't even go to college, right? Like these are guys that were homies of LeBron that rode LeBron's coattails for a while, and then now have branched off and they're multimillionaires on their own, right? Maverick, I think Rich Paul has signed the most $100 million contracts in the last few years in the NBA, and then Maverick Carter, like I said, is worth probably $60 million by himself, no college degree, right? Like these are what LeBron has been able to elevate. These men, if they've been able to elevate, now they're spreading their wings and doing things that they probably never thought of when they were back in the hood in Akron, right? These guys are from Akron, Ohio. They're not from like Chicago or Los Angeles or New York. No, these guys are from the hood of Akron, Ohio. They weren't very good at basketball besides LeBron, and have been able to make $1 billion empire essentially. So he definitely is someone who is revolutionized. Then when I talk about revolutionizing, like I said, it's not just basketball, but like with his investments, with his media companies, with his things like that. NBA players are now. LeBron James will not be the last $1 billion active athlete in the NBA. Why? Because he has now made it a trend. He's now made it fashionable. He's now made it almost mandatory to have investments outside of just playing basketball. Like the top guys like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, James Harden, these guys now have millions and millions of dollars of their NBA money tied up in investments. So these guys will all probably eventually be billionaires before the time they're, but way before Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson ever did it, because LeBron has made it almost, like I said, mandatory to be invested outside of just the court. And now, just like he's now made it mandatory in the NBA to really move into the mobility to go get a championship, because you're almost talked about if you take all the money and don't go play with a better team, right? Like you're almost talked about badly in the press. And that's because of the precedent that LeBron has set that was followed by Kevin Durant, that has been followed by several other players since then. And so the same way he did that, made mobility really forgiving and really normal in the NBA, players changing teams all the time to try to win championships. He has now made being a businessman normal, and he's normalized that while being an active athlete. So it's beautiful to see.
Well, I'll tell you what, I love it. And I have a lot of respect for this guy that I'm speaking with by the name of Jeff Lightsy Jr. Jeff is at theblackballschannel.com. He does a lot of commentary on sports and everything, and really a lot of things, not even just sports. He kind of hits a lot of different topics, and he's really great to watch. And you can also follow him on social media at jlightsy7. There's his social media, so find him on Instagram and everything else. Also, if you could, please hit the thumbs up button, share button, and subscribe button. And also, those of you who want to know more about things like stock market investing, we actually have a free Black Stock Market Challenge, which is like a mini course you can go through absolutely free. And it'll get you kind of moving on stock market investing, things like that. I'll send you a sequence of 5 projects over a 5-day period that you can apply that'll get you going on stock market investing and give you pretty much what you need to be an active investor. So thank you guys for hanging out with us. It was great to see you. We love you. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out, and we are out of here. See you soon. Take care. Peace.